Hello everyone and welcome back to Games with Just Animations. And today, as you have read from the title, we will be talking about the top 10 most fun cards from Innistrad Midnight Hunt.
Disclaimer, this is on our opinion, our view on fun. For us, fun is mainly being able to play Battlecruiser Magic and be a Timmy, which means we like making big, sloshy plays like slapping Colossification and Double Strike on a 1/1 Human Soldier token, or going from 0 to hero board state with cards like Scoot Swarm and Krenko Mob Boss.
We also think that being able to impact the table in a big way with cards like Time Sifter and Teferi's Puzzle Box is fun. Finally, we also consider cards that get the table talking, such as cards with the Council's Dilemma mechanic, as fun. Commander All-Stars like Expropriate, Savara Stampede, and Council's Judgment, or even cards like Yasova Dragonclaw, which makes you think twice about making an enemy out of them. So without any delay, let's roll right into it. Okay, first up we have Popup Stitcher. Popup Stitcher is a relatively cheap card for 2 and a blue, which says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, create a 2/2 zombie creature token with Decay. Then, when you have 3 or more tokens, transform Popup Stitcher into Popup Factory. Popup Factory is basically an artifact that says all tokens you control become 3/3s.
Why is this card fun though? Well, with this card in an Izzet Spellslinger's deck, you can have a smack ton of 2/2 forces on the ground, which you can turn them into 3/3s to swing out so hard even Darksteel Ingot will break.
Examples of such decks would be Niv-Mizzet Perun, Adelis the Cinder Winds, and Tolred Sky Summoners.
Next on the chopping board, we have the almighty Unnatural Growth, which is a very green heavy card with the cost of 1 and 4 greens, which is 4 too many for a child who never likes to eat vegetables.
But with the high cost comes high reward. This card lets you double the power and toughness of every creature you control at the beginning of combat. This card is very powerful for decks like Mono Green and Guru's Smash decks.
The only drawback to this card is its farm-like casting cost, so it makes it practically impossible to put into 3-colored decks, unless you have a very good, expensive mana base.
Hashtag Wizards, please reprint more Shocks and Painlands. Anyways, moving on, we have Moving on, we have Cheesecarda Pha, which is basically an alternate win con on a body. It is a 1/3 creature for 1 and a blue for basically a spellbolt and an alternate win con slapped on it. With the win con being 13 cards in hand at the beginning of your next upkeep equals a W. And it also has a draw a card ability that costs 3 and a blue.
So why is this card fun? The actual spicy parts are probably its first and second ability. Having no maximum hand size lets you open a gate to endless possibilities. A big hand size means more nasties in your hands that opponents have to be wary of. Or is there?
There could be a 13 card hand filled with gas, or it could be lands. Who knows? Its other ability of having an alternate win con gives your opponents tunnel vision to eliminate it as a threat. And while your opponents are scratching their heads thinking about how to get rid of a creature while keeping in mind that you may have a spell to foil their plans with, aka counterspells, in that big chunky hand size of yours. Before all that, you are free to mess the board as much as you want.
And by the time your opponents finally get rid of that pest, you're already one step closer to winning. Note, the card draw ability can be also a good mana sink.
So you can put Cheesecarda Pha in Necrosar decks, Tatyova decks, AC Tyrant of Gyre decks, Azami Lady of Scrolls, either one of the Niv-Mizzets we have, and literally any card draw decks. These decks already want to draw an insane amount of cards, and having an extra unlimited hand size effect is amazing.
Now let's meet the commander, who is the MTG version of Capitalist. Florian Valderin Scion is a 3/3 legendary vampire noble with first strike, and after you slap your opponents as hard as you can count the amount of life you slapped out of them and then look at that many cards from the library. Then you choose your lucky card of the day and leave it in exile and bottom rest.
And that seemingly insignificant card in exile can be played during this turn. This heck of a vampire noble would ransack your mana pool of 1 red and a black, which is extremely mana efficient considering its power, toughness, and the heck of ability it gives you.
Now tell me, oh Mythical Orange on my table, Why is this card fun?
Well, feeble middle-aged child, this card is fun because you can make a group slug deck with it. You can pair it with other group slug all-stars like Mogis, God of Slaughter, Nihab the Eternal, Heartless Hidetsugu, Dictate of the Twin Gods, to deal a freak ton of damage to your opponents all at once. And after that, Florian's ability basically becomes a tutor at this point. So I would compare him to Marilyn of the Morn Song, but a funner version.
Huh, Group Slug. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yes, Group Slug is an archetype that Sagan's Wonderland would love to have as its main attraction. Its ability to end the fight as fast and as flamboyantly as it can is a force to be reckoned with. The point is, Group Slug is asking you to swing out as hard as you can and with as much force as you can get.
With Group Slug, you are not here to make friends. You are here to make sparks fly. Basically, you want to be the bad guy at the table. Well, okay, moving on. We have Coreless, Stalwart Slayer. He's a 2/3 legendary human knight for 1 red and a white, with flying and haste. He also has, if a spell would hit you or your ever-growing board, then Uno skip. And if a spell would hit anything but you and your stuff, Uno +2. But in this case, it's actually only +1, but still pretty good, not gonna lie.
So why is Coreless fun, you might ask? Well, decks with this card in it will benefit from big splashy splooshy spells like chunk damage-based board wipes. To hefty burn spells, you can also boost up the damage of a normal burn spell to give it an extra spice. This card is fun for the fact that it's a new and fresh Boros commander which features an interesting deck idea. Cause hey, who doesn't want to run the all-new Boros Burn?
Decks who would lunge at this card and keep it to themselves, like Golem and the Ring, would be decks with Fire Song and Sunspeaker, Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, and Nihab the Eternal. You typically want to base your deck around dealing direct damage to your opponents at every chance you get in these decks. Now, the pack forms, the moon rises, and the alpha howls. Yes, there is no mistake. We will now talk about the overdue werewolf commander, Tovolar, Dire Overlord. Ah, woo! But let's talk about the front side, shall we? Tovolar, Dire Overlord is a 3/3 human werewolf with, whenever one of your packmates hits an opponent, draw a card. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if 3 pack members assemble, day turns to night and everybody transforms. He also has Daybound to stop the day and night cycle.
When the sun sets and the moon rises, they gather and they hunt. Tovolar, the Midnight Scourge, howls. He becomes a 4/4 werewolf, and in addition to his on-hit draw a card effect, he has pay X, red and a green, and one of your packmates get +X+0 and trample. Oh, and he also has Nightbound because reasons.
It's pretty self-explanatory why Tovolar is fun. He's an overdue werewolf commander, but I believe it was worth the wait. He gives you cards on hit, and he's able to flip all of your werewolves when you have 3 of them, and that's including himself. That single-handedly fixed the major problem with Werewolf Tribal.
And the Keswick Wolf run ability is the cherry on top of all of it. Like, you can just pay 0 into the X and give one of your werewolves trample, which leads to drawing a card. So basically, just pick out all the best werewolves from the format and just stuff them into the 9/9 card deck and have fun swinging. For once, we can both agree on something. Tovolar, you have done your kind of justice. Now, everyone, remember that old movie you may have seen in your teens or your childhood? Yeah, the one with that extremely old house which devours greedy children by luring them into the house with toys. Ugh, that movie scared the heck out of me. Now imagine that being printed on a dual-sided land, and you get Hostel Hostel and Creeping In.
Hostel Hostel is a land on one side that produces colorless mana, and the other ability being tap, pay 1 generic mana, and normal creature to put a soul counter on the house. And when you have 3 or more soul counters on it, you can transform it into a very big and scary 4/7 horror construct.
Which is basically that certain movie, but the main characters actually die and the house decides to go on a victory run around town because it has 3 lingering souls in its body. This abomination has whenever it attacks, you may exile a creature card. If you do, you gain X life and everybody loses X life. X being the amount of creatures you exile with Creeping In.
too long didn't read. It basically says, I swing once, I exile, then I damage everyone by 1 and I gain 1 health. Swing twice, and I do everything again, but just change the number to 2, and this snowballs, making it basically a literal powerhouse after you exile 5 or more creatures. And its final ability makes it balanced. Yes, you heard me, makes it balanced. What see? How is this card balanced when you can pay 4 and phase it out?
Once you phase it out, you basically make it untouchable to any sort of spell, which is totally not a problem here when you can have a permanent life gain / burn effect on the board and no one can remove it. So why is this fun? Well, if I actually have to spell it out for you, you are one out of 2 things. 1, you are new to Magic, which I can't blame you then. 2, you are an absolute baboon who accidentally clicked the video on a stolen iPad.
This card is fun because, hey, why win with the boring generic ways like creature damage or going infinite when I can have a house that drains your energy and makes you shrivel up like a raisin? This card can also be implemented into all decks as it uses colorless mana, but typically you would want to put it into a graveyard or aristocrat's deck. Now let's talk about Ludovic, Necro Genius. He is a 2/3 legendary human wizard for just blue and a black with whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, mill a card. And pay X double blue double black and exile X creature cards from your graveyard. Transform Ludovic Necro Genius and X can't be 0. You can only activate as a sorcery.
On the backside we have Ulag, Ludovic's Hubris, a 4/4 legendary zombie with, as this card transforms to Ulag, it becomes a copy of a creature card exiled with it, except its name is Ulag, Ludovic's Hubris, and it's still a 4/4, and it's a legendary blue and black zombie in addition to all its other colors and types. Then you slap the number of +1/+1 counters on Ulag equal to the number of creature cards exiled with it. So why is this fun?
Well, at first glance, Ludovic is a typical Dimir commander who wants to self-mill a lot into the bin and do something with them. And yes, you're right, it fits that shell. But I like to think that Ludovic is a clone and reanimated commander. You can use cards like Entomb or the way more affordable Auric Lord Mage to search your haymaker cards like Blightsteel Colossus or literally any big Eldrazi, or utility cards like Consecrated Sphinx or Shieldred to put into your graveyard.
Then, when you start exiling, you can transform into them. These cards cost a lot of mana, and only playing a minimum of 5 mana to get them is amazing. If you don't want to copy them with Ludovic, you can reanimate them. Ludovic is kinda like a glass cannon because he exiles. That means you can never get them back. So there's that, but that's one of the reasons we think he's fun. He's your typical Dimir self-mill shell, just different.
And Ludovic is less oppressive Lazav deck, and we mean both of them because they are just 2 good toolbox commanders. Ludovic is like them, but fairer. And finally, you can go with a Voltron strategy. You can mill cards like the aforementioned Blightsteel Colossus and exile enough cards to make it chonky and one-shot someone.
Exactly. And the second last card on the list is Death Bonnet Sprout and Death Bonnet Hawk, which is a 1/1 for a green mana that has, at the start of your upkeep, dump a card from the top of your library into the graveyard. And if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, transform it. On the other side of this card, you have a 3/3 Death Bonnet Hawk, which has the ability to exile a card from your graveyard on every upkeep if you choose to. And if the card is a creature card, Death Bonnet Hawk gets a +1/+1 counter.
If this card is in your starting hand, you can proudly shout to the world, I have a decent 1-drop that is not a Llanowar Elves or a Soul Ring, and watch everyone look at you in wonder as you place down Death Bonnet Sprout on your first turn.
This card actually pairs pretty well with Creeping In, as it gives you a way to get gas for the life drain effect on Creeping In. It can also be an underestimated threat as long as you keep it alive. You can also keep exiling creatures to prevent the grubby hands of a pesky reanimated deck from stealing creature cards from your graveyard. And by the time you know it, you easily have an 8/8 on the field which your opponents have to deal with. Typically, I would put it into a self-mill deck which will serve as a very early game mill outlet.
Finally, let's talk about the underdog of the list, Stuffed Bear. Stuffed Bear is a 2 generic mana costing artifact with pay another 2 generic and you get a 4/4 green bear artifact creature. You know that's funny, how a bear in Magic is a 2/2. But then, a killed, stuffed, and possessed bear is a 4/4.
Anyways, I bet you're asking, why is this card on the list? Well, first of all, it can be used in artifact decks. Typically, these decks will already have cards like Inspiring Sanctuary and Chief Engineer, which turns Stuffed Bear into a mana rock when it needs to be. More importantly, you can put Stuffed Bear in the new Artifactocrats deck. These decks typically need creatures and artifacts to be sacrificed, so why not have them both?
And finally, it can be a game ender when it's a 1v1 and you guys are on top deck mode. Like, you get to beat up someone with an artifact that turns into a green bear.
And that's just about wrapping up this video. If you wish to spread the word of our Lord and Savior RN Jesus,
and if you want to help spread the word, please like and subscribe if you aren't already. This would help push our video to other people because that's how the old gods of YouTube shattered the reality of how you watch your YouTube videos. So that's about it. We post a new video every 2 weeks. So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye!
my bro Neon Sluggy just had his birthday, so happy birthday, my dude. See you guys later. Bye.